Without you, it's not.
Welcome back, y'all. Thank you for being here on the Salty Runback Esports, or Salty Runback Pod Twitch channel, for the Collegiate Championship. Round of 16 action between UST and Purdue Northwest has taken a bit of an unexpected turn as Purdue Northwest, after being stifled in Game 1, came out roaring, all guns blazing in Game 2. Yeah. Well, there was one gun blazing, really, and his name was Doubtful.
Absolutely. Doubtful. I feel like a gun would be a little bit of an understatement. That man was a full-on bazooka, military-grade bazooka, just diving into all of the members of UST and throwing them for such a loop. So I have to think that, going into this Game 3, they're going to respect Doubtful a little bit more. And even in Game 1, the one that PNW lost, Doubtful still looked pretty solid in the early game before things went south. So I think that they have recognized that this is a man to be feared. They have to pay respects to him. They're probably going to ban away maybe that Diana, maybe a couple other pocket picks, or at the very least, give Kenvi a little bit of a better matchup, because it really felt like Diana was completely fine in that match. And usually that would be something you would expect Gwen to be fine in, because you have the Hollow Mist. This prevents you from getting engaged on, but that didn't matter because every time it just felt like Doubtful beat Kenvi to the punch in a lot of those exchanges. And as a result, they won the mid game and were able to slow it down, or snowball it up rather, into a dominant late game. So they have to make sure that it starts at the early game, that they can attack Doubtful at the root, and make sure that Kenvi is sitting good in that jungle matchup.
Yeah, I haven't seen this jungle-centric a series in a long time. I mean, as far as kind of the jungle being on the forefront, I should say, right? Being the cover boys, right? Because obviously, jungle has a massive impact on the game, kind of no matter what. But these guys being the carries of their team, we saw that Kindred performance in Game 1 and what the Gwen could have been. Because Gwen obviously could be an absolute demon in the mid and late game. With the amount of true damage she deals, the healing, like you said, the Hallowed Mist, she can get up close in melee range, the Needlework can hit from a long range. But Doubtful was the first one to level 6, and he made it everybody's problem. It was gorgeous stuff from him. And so, yeah, I mean, to your point kind of earlier, I'm really interested to see how this draft is going to shake out, because I think we're going to see a lot more jungle priority in bands 1, 2, and 3, and that could end up filtering down to, let's say, maybe getting the Varus or the Ashe off the ban table, right? We still haven't seen a winking game. And depending on how the drafts do or don't go, depending on how much respect UST does or doesn't want to pay Klexo and Doubtful, maybe I think that'll delay potentially when we see the winking game.
Yeah, I was actually about to say, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. If they pay more respects up toward that jungle, if they ban out some of those bigger pocket picks from Kenvi and from Doubtful alike, then it does it does allow some of those 80 carry picks, like the Varus, like the Ashe that you mentioned, to make their way into the pick phase right off into the draft. So I wonder if we're going to see that happen at all, because then that could very much focus and center, what once was a jungle-centric matchup that was getting all the hype to an 80 carry-centric matchup. And like you said, allowing Enthrall to potentially really hit his stride in some of these games, because we've been waiting for Enthrall to really activate, because of not only the interview that you gave, which was beautiful, by the way, 4x4, awesome stuff on that, but also because we've been told that Enthrall is a mechanical mastermind, that he is a mechanical beast. And I'm really, really hoping that we can see that at some point in this series, and hopefully it is in potentially another PNW win.
Hope so. If nothing else, just to put a bit more of a scare into the University of St. Thomas, the defending CLOL champions. They rolled through the regular season. Trevor and Array back on the roster for the first time, or for Array rather, back on the roster for the first time since 2021. Winking, rookie of the split in the MEC. Again, two champions of their respective conferences coming in hot to try to get into the top 8 and send the other team home. Again, we're not in the double elim phase of the bracket just yet, but we are in best of 5 territory, so we've got at least 2 more games to go. Draft should be just around the corner here, but Quacks, shifting things a little bit over to the University of St. Thomas side of things, right? Kenvi has been the highlight and the star of this one, but Porsche and Prank, they have had, I said it was going to be a wet noodle fight up in the top lane when we saw the Skarner Udyr. I have had some whack takes in my life. That one's up there. I really missed the mark on how that top lane matchup went.
Yeah, Porsche was really bullying out Prank in that first game, and honestly, it felt like more of the same in game number 1 as well, with just how under pressure Prank was, constantly under his tower, getting dove, right? And in this game, there was like no jungle pressure whatsoever coming from the top lane. It was all, like you said, a wet noodle fight, and I feel like you said, playing a wet noodle fight out there, a little bit of an understatement, more like they're playing with whips with each other, like toy whips at that point in the game number 2. So I wonder if it's going to evolve from maybe whips to like wooden whips or rope whips to like metal whips here in game number 3. If Prank and Porsche are going to up the ante in the amount of skirmishing they've done with each other just in that top lane. As we hop into the draft, Kindred immediately taken off the table.
Yeah, they still don't want Kenvy on that one. Purdue Northwest on the blue side here, like in game 1. Varus will not fall, but again, in games or in bands 2 and 3 here, we'll see what Purdue Northwest wants to go with. Again, for them, for their picks and the UST bans, that is the highlight story for me between games 1 and 2, because we saw a completely different draft from PNW and a completely different result as well. And UST, look, they're the favorites, but they're not dumb. They're not cocky, right? They know they're gonna have to pay some sort of respect, whether in draft or in game 2 doubtful.
For sure. And I mean, for PNW, going into this series, definitely was one final test for them, right? I feel like the moniker or the motto of the CLOL championship definitely applies here to Purdue. A lot of people were saying, they're probably not going to be able to get past UST. If they take a game here, this would be an absolutely huge series. One final test, they would be throwing that out the window and saying, we're going to test ourselves in the top 8. And that would be so exciting to see as we continue rolling through the bans here. Olaf and Ash taken off the table yet again. Skarner also taken away by UST because PNW are blue side this time around. And I have to think, we're going to go for the Jinx. They do not want to give that over to Wing King. This has been banned away by Red Squad in all 3 games just because Jinx is so strong and so flexible as well with a lot of the supports that are meta. You can pair it with an Enchanter, you can pair it with an Engage support. So I have to think that flexibility is what is going to be in the minds of PNW, as maybe they'll play something like the Aphelios. Aphelios is good with Enchanters. Aphelios is good with Engage. You deny it away from Array, but instead they're going to go right back to the Senna, and it's actually going to be UST going right back to the Aphelios.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. Array was a monster on that in game 1. Obviously, Kenby was the star of the show, but now this looks a little bit more like that game 1 draft. Yes, it's on the same side, but so far, pretty stock standard here from UST. And you mentioned the one final test. That is the theme of this CLOL championship, and what Purdue Northwest or UST, the winner of this game, they're facing off against, like we mentioned earlier, they're the winner of SLU UCSD. And we should mention that on one of our other partner streams on the Winthrop Esports channel, Winthrop versus GVU is either has just started or is just about to start. So you take a look at that. The Ottawa game, the Ottawa St. Clair game is on Ring the Rift at the same time. And then we've got more games ahead of us for at least another 4 or 5 hours here. Quacks.
For sure. And I would expect, I'm really hoping that this series actually goes the full distance of 5 games. That would be awesome to see, especially for an underdog squad like PNW, potentially upsetting the Giants of UST, who, like we've said several times, back-to-back champions wanting to make the 3-peat. It's never happened before in CLOL, as both squads reveal their jungle picks. Doubtful going right back to the Diana, wasn't banned away, and Xin Zhao being picked up for Kenby. So another carry champion, but I feel like Xin Zhao is a little bit more flexible in regards to the style that he can play. He can be that big, early game pressure machine that can really dive into your jungle, can make a lot of these big skirmishes impossible to play against, but he can also be very facilitator heavy, right? He's good with the dives, he's good with the knock-up. If you're able to knock someone up under the tower, then the rest of your team can follow. As a Yasuo band coming out here, they do not want that combo to happen. You were talking about this in game number 2, and I think UST heard you, 4x4.
That, you know what, this is not to be, what's the word I'm looking for, condescending to PNW, but the fact that you're getting an Irelia and a Yasuo ban on round 2, I think that's a dubski enough for me. That they have gotten so much respect out of kind of these more unorthodox picks. That feels really, really good. But to your point about the Xin Zhao, Kenby, he could go absolutely nuclear on this pick, but again, I think it's about being a bridge for him, right? Because like you said, the base damages that this champion has, the impact that the ultimate can have, right? Flash ult, those are what you're looking for Xin Zhao when any fight breaks out, because that is what you kind of become. Camille and Jace here. I think it's going to be Camille. I guess Camille. It could be Camille top or Camille support, right? The Ornn Camille, we don't know. Those could go either way here. But in the mid lane, yes, there we go. It will be Klexo on the Jace, I think, and matched by Robbie Bob on the Orianna.
So yeah, we see that Prank is going top lane with that Camille, and that is going to be an Ornn support. This game kind of feels like what worked for both teams in their respective wins is being brought back here in game number 3. You know, obviously we have remnants of what UST played in game number 1. We have the Cassante, we have the Aphelios, right? We have Kenvi on an aggressive champion, not the Kindred this time, but rather the Zinzao. And on the other side, PNW, they're picking up the Diana, they're picking up the Orange support along with the Senna. So it feels like both of these teams, they know what works. They're going to be running it back. And honestly, I feel like that makes it for a more exciting game 3 as to which strategy can give the team the extra edge here and take us to series point.
I think you hit the nail right on the head there. This looks like it's not exactly the same as, but it's both teams reverting to what worked for them stylistically, compositionally in their respective wins. Again, UST a dominant game 1, PNW a dominant game 2. I think the only difference for me would be, what does Kenvi's role look like, right? Because he is not going to get all the resources. At least I imagine he's not. As the Xin Zhao, your role in the late game is to survive, lay down the Black Cleaver armor shred, and be a bit of a one-button Boris with that Crescent Guard, which should be a really, really interesting game. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this one shakes out. And I think especially this Diana, right, being let through, that is a bit of a, you know, you're kind of putting your cards on the table there. If you're UST, or rather, hold up. Well, we got the thingy switched. I got confused there for a second. But for Purdue Northwest, right? For UST, letting that through is a statement in and of itself, because they're saying, look, we have some plan to deal with that. What that plan is, I think, remains to be seen. But they have some way to not let what happened in game 2 happen in game 3 again.
For sure. And I think it honestly starts with, you know, the side lanes. I'm definitely looking at the solo lanes more than I'm looking at the bot lane here in this game. I would expect Porsche and Prank to be up to their usual shenanigans, probably going to fight a lot, especially when you have a champion like Camille who wants to brawl out with that passive shield, always being able to be used in your advantage. And in the mid lane, I would imagine it's probably Klexo going to try and bully out Robbie Bob as much as possible, try to get that priority for Doubtful, and if they can do that, really try and choke Kenvi out of the early game where Zinzao is his strongest.
Yeah, and it's not quite the same race to 6, but it's a huge power spike for both of these junglers, clearing in opposite directions. But you'll hit level 3 from both of these first quadrants. Deep vision gotten by both respective sides, right? So you got that blue side ward in the red side, red buff pit. I'll say that 5 times fast. And the red ward by the Raptors as well.
You can see Kenvi potentially looking for something in the top lane, but isn't going to want to try and chance it. But yeah, Frank dealing a decent amount of damage to Porsche, forcing him to burn all of his pots this early on, and just overall the pressure that Camille has with this grasp is making it really difficult for Porsche to lane this early, and giving a solid priority lead here over toward Doubtful. Fortunately though, Kenvi is pathing toward the bot side, so not really going to be able to invade this Xin early, so curious to see if we'll see a pivot from him as he's close to finishing his full clear. Meanwhile, Kenvi is just starting on his 4th camp.
Both at about level 3 here. Right, like you said, it's a 1 camp difference so far. Maybe looking for the all-in here. Klexo gonna knock Robbie Bob away in melee form here. Kenvi finished up the rest of his camp, so he didn't actually full clear bottom to top. He just went Wolves, cleared out the top side, and now looking to Shadow should things get hairy on the bottom side.
You can see the pings coming out from mid lane. Doubtful maybe looking for a kill as Hook goes and lands by Trevor. Pretty quiet early game so far. You can see that Kenvi probably just going to fall back on his Scuttle Crab, and Doubtful going to do the same thing. No tower dive really available for Doubtful either, because it's Cassante. You never ever want to dive a Cassante. It is a death sentence. As a jungler, I've learned this the hard way.
Inadvisable, yeah, to put it one way. Oh, both junglers lurking here. Here we go, Quacks. Klexo's out of mana, and he might be out of luck here. Has to flash and burns it for 0. First blood to Kenvi.
Yeah, beautiful flash W there, or W flash there by Kenvi. Super good reaction timer. Klexo no flash now means that Robbie Bob can maybe put his foot on the gas a little bit more, make it so that Klexo doesn't necessarily get to trade nearly as with nearly as much impunity as he once was. As Kenvi is lurking in the bot side, but Doubtful is on a reset. Has a little bit of a timer here to maybe counter this, but doesn't look like there's anything to be had. Similar to top lane, diving in Ornn would be inadvisable. As
yeah, a great word, by the way, impunity. That's one of my favorites. Ignite does not go down here. I thought Trevor was going to rip that onto Winking immediately here, but The same situation that he was in early on here, not having a great time of things in the early game, but really not by any fault of his own, right? This is a bit of the concession that you make when you pick this Senna Ornn lane, right? And Senna TK, things like that. Having a melee champion farm, right? It can be a little bit trickier, but you are banking on the late game. But again, this mid jungle, the mid game spike, really the whole top side, how it's going to peak in the mid game. Good golly, Miss Molly. It is going to be really scary to watch if they could get rolling.
For sure. And I mean, it starts at the beginning, right? Being able to, sort of lay those seeds down in the early game so that they can sprout into let's say just a beautiful flower in the mid game. And I think that the first objective that has to be on both teams' mind is going to be that, those grubs, right? Which are about to spawn in about 30 seconds time here, a little bit over that. And even Winking has made his way up toward the top side, potentially wants to help try and take those along with Doubtful. This is a really interesting roam from Winking, just given what's been happening in bot lane so far. So I'm curious to see how UST are going to react to this as they do spot Winking out on a ward.
Yeah, and both a presence is felt in the mid lane by all teams here. Winking has shown up here, and again, uses the Shadow Klexo. Lax Embrace goes wide. Shockwave bottled up on by Trevor. He gets the healing down on the Klexo, but the Ignite rips right through it. Make it 2 kills for Kenvi, punishing the flashless Jace.
No flash, no hope, no help there for Klexo. No TP as well, so is going to force Winking into this mid lane to pick up that experience, and that's going to open UST, that's going to open Kenvi up to this avenue to take away these grubs, to deny those seeds like we were talking about for PNW to maybe play around this mid-jungle duo in the mid game. It just stunts the growth of those carry champions and puts UST further ahead.
You get the resources here early on to Kenvi. Again, this was kind of the million-dollar question for me anyway, was with a player like Kenvi, right, who can do so much with whatever you give to this man on champions, right? Xin Zhao, he's going to be your mid-game bridge into the late game. Klexo not having a good time of things, had the Irelia and the Yasuo banned away, and I joked in draft that that's a big win, but now you're on the other side of it, right? To combo this up, you're having to dig a little bit deeper into your champion pool. Array in a little bit of trouble here, pops the Ghost, still has the Flash, but will not have to use it. Winking not there just yet in terms of damage, but a pretty good trade for the PNW bot lane.
I mean, yeah, good combo there by the bot lane of PNW. They managed to knock him up with the knock-up, and then the root lands, and so Array doesn't really have anywhere to run, any way to dodge that combo, and it chunks him out as a result. It's going to force him to stay under his tower because they did spot out Doubtful, taking away that crab. So they know this Diana's around the bot side, and they have to pay respects to that.
Call the Forge gun goes out. Robbie Bob waits it out, flashes away, but gets aggressed upon the Moonfall, gives him a taste of his own medicine. Can be in with the Crescent Guard here. Has to be careful what he gets up to here. And the Hextech Ultimatum, it's gone. Oh my goodness, almost a flash there from Trevor. And that might have been ill-advised as well. 2 over to Purdue Northwest. All of a sudden, Quacks, Klexo's right back in it.
Absolutely, Klexo 2-2 now. After a rough early game, he manages to pick a couple of those up, and they are going to reap the rewards of taking out the mid-jungle duo of UST and pick themselves up the dragon. Scaling, I feel, in this game is more important than ever with how many late-game threats you have on both sides of the coin, so being able to set that up this early on into the game, definitely going to be a meaningful advantage for PNW in the long run.
Yeah, getting that Jace, like you said, I mean, and even with any sort of tier champion, right? Having to mitigate the fact you got no combat stats in there. Jace doesn't really do a ton in the early game, but in the mid game, when he's hitting those shock blasts into a team that, aside from the Cassante, is relatively squishy here. So again, something to watch as these fights progress here. Pwn are able to get a nice searing charge down onto Trevor. Hooks a cannon minion. That's looking good for him. Array is level 6 though, has the Moonlight Vigil. Green-white isn't ideal here. Doesn't have the lockdown of that CC, so would have to wait until level 6 probably for the all-in from Trevor. No dice here just yet. There's that purple gun that you would want here. Kenvi, once he gets that Crescent Guard back up, Quacks, I think we're going to see some fireworks in the bottom lane. But for now, the attention is paid over toward the mid lane. Klexo has that flash back up, and it's actually Robbie Bob that's on the short end of the stick as far as the flash advantage.
And those grubs are going to be spawning up soon, so you can see Kenvi making his way toward the top side as Klexo gets a nice little EQ combo onto Robbie Bob. Is probably going to force him to back, and he doesn't have TP, so I think Klexo just wants to shove out the next wave, wants to get the reset, will probably get his item, actually, when he comes back, and that'll be a huge advantage for these next few grubs that should be spawning in about a minute's time.
And we'll see who's able to establish that line of vision first. Really good reset timing by Kenvi. I think just based on the tempo, kind of knowing when he's going to be able to be back. And to get back on, like you said, Quacks, a really big item spike. Having a Titanic Hydra there compared to just a Blasting Wand here, right? Doubtful. I think he might be back here. Maybe he's able to get back with an Asher's Tooth, right? He's up in farm despite being down in kills. The root goes out here, procs it. The Gravitum doing some work here for Array. Could go with the Moonlight Vigil on the Hail Mary, but will decide against it. That was probably the right choice there.
And this is the disadvantage, right, for PNW of leaving Poner to his own devices in the bot lane, because now you can see Wing King has to roam on down to save his Ornn. Instead, you would usually want him to be on those grubs, to be there to fight for that objective, but instead he is just forced down here. Array, though, potentially caught out, did get knocked up, but they're not going to engage on it. Poner just doesn't have enough mana!
Doubtful from left field, flashing in with the Moonfall. How about 3 in a row for Klexo? This mid-jungle for Purdue Northwest, you can never count them out, Quacks. Kenvi, though, putting on a clinic. That Titanic Hydra hits like a truck. Meanwhile, in the bottom lane, disaster strikes for Purdue Northwest.
They managed to get a kill onto Wing King, but Kenvi, crucially, on that top side, making use of that Titanic Hydra. Those autos dealing so much damage and just completely eviscerating Doubtful in the process. And with the respawns coming up just now, it's looking like USD are going to pick up all 6 grubs. So a major investment in the early game paying off for them. And PNW, they have to try and get an investment of their own. They have the dragons, and they'll have the opportunity to get another one in about 2 minutes' time. But if they can't get this one, if they are locked out of getting this mountain dragon, it could spell bad news for this mid-game setup that we were highlighting so heavily for PNW.
Yeah, they're just not on fantastic kind of spikes to fight, right? I mean, you look at it kind of across the board, and as far as what you've got in the inventory, I kind of favor UST in almost every lane, right? And it might not be too much of a stretch to say, okay, Kenvi back, right? He might not be the big capital C carry, but my goodness, he's doing all the heavy lifting as far as this early game is concerned, right? And I mean, and being an early game carry and being a fantastic early game jungler doesn't have to look exactly like it did in game 1 for Kenvi. Obviously, he knows what he's supposed to do. He knows his role on these champions. Hang on a second here. Prank might be in a little bit of trouble here. Porsche already used the Q3 here. Going to go try to go all out here. Meanwhile, Array gets dove. Poner walking away with the kill here. He's on that Sunfire cape, so he's a little bit tougher to chew through, but I think he might be dead duckling here. Doubtful. Going in here, or excuse me, Doubtful getting aggressed on by Kenvi, apologies. Doesn't need the Crescent Guard. It's a double kill for Robbie Bob, the Shockwave, the death knell there as UST keep on marching forward. That last long range hook, that, even by Nautilus hitbox standards, that is goofy. Double TP coming in. Klexo gets the Shock Blast onto Trevor, but the knockup comes in.
Trevor's
right have to bail him
alive!
out. There goes the Hextech Ultimatum. Prank gets in there, but I think he will pay the Iron Press. Just kidding. Well, just kidding about that. Very nicely done by Robbie Bob, able to get the damage down at the last second there. A little bit of a reach there by Prank, but he got what he came for. And after all that, we're kind of back where we started.
That looked like a Chinese TikTok Camille play for a minute there by Prank. I was thinking he was going to get out, but Robbie Bob manages to secure it, gets 3 kills to his name, and this is what you were talking about. The greatness of being a jungler and what Kenvi has been doing isn't just getting kills, it's also setting up your team for the wins, and that's exactly what he did on the Xin Zhao, and that's exactly what he's doing here. He's spearheading the operation to go for this dragon, so that'll be 2 dragons being taken, 1 apiece for both teams, and it really has to feel bad for PNW, who want to get Klexo ahead, who want to get Doubtful ahead, and they just are never able to find these avenues to do so.
Yeah, and you got to give credit to UST, right? Because we talked about kind of the suffocating brand of League of Legends that they played in game 1, and that was on the back of Kenvi and his Kindred. But this is kind of a different brand of that, right? They're fighting on because they've just got better item spikes right now, right? In the mid game, Klexo is going to hit like a truck, right? But they're taking fights in which things like the Jace poke they don't even have to be accounted for because they are the first to every objective. They are the ones asking the questions. And Purdue Northwest, they don't have any answers just yet, but that's not to say they won't in the future, right? I mean, for me, this 2,500 gold lead, it's still okay. Yeah, like there are no towers down, right? Yeah, the 6 grubs don't feel great, but it's still a dragon apiece. Oh boy, when the observers do this
yikes.
Yeah, this is how you know you've got good observers. And if you've been watching League of Legends, like your instincts, your spidey senses kind of go off. So like when you zoom in on a completely fog award out patch of grass, you're like, someone's gonna die.
No one dies, luckily. The only casualty of this battle is going to be the Rift Herald, and UST are going to take that without any kind of competition. PNW can't walk up to it at all. You can see PNW making their way down toward the bot side. I think Klexo is going to manage to get that turret. Just kidding. Robbie Bob is teleporting to save that one.
Very nicely done, and communicating with everybody else here. Trevor using the hook to get himself in place here. He's got the flash should he want to use it. Instead, he'll go for the depth charge hook. Unbelievable. Trevor's money on the Nautilus, but they might have been enough more than they could shoot. The moonfall not going to land. Doubtful. Will fall prey to Robbie Bob's flash, but they'll get Trevor as a secondary piece.
But they committed 4 members toward this bot lane. They put so much attention on getting Trevor that no one is here to defend against the mid lane. And they managed to drop down the Herald. TP is actually going to be expended, so nice play there from PNW. Nice reaction there. But Klexo might not be able to stop this.
Oh, man, those grubbies really help. Those tater tots, they got bite to him. Dawning Shadow over the top. Winking will be helped, or excuse me, Winking helping out Klexo. Array! Where did he go?
Array caught out completely, and the lethality from Klexo bursting down the 80 carry. 5-2 now. This Jace looking pretty scary. Doesn't have 2 items yet, but I really think that once he gets, those armor shred items, as Trevor, why would you try that?
Yeah. Look, you have to take certain risks as a support, right?
That's just straight up disrespect. If I'm doubtful there, I'm going to all chat. I'm typing question mark. Trevor, man, why would you try that? That's just mean. That's personal. That's a personal attack to us junglers.
Yeah, this is my hood, homie. You gotta check in before you walk around like you own the place. But he will get out with his life and crucially with his flash as well. So not for nothing there, right? The flash hook still very much alive. The flash depth charge, point and click CC that Trevor can provide. He's been really good on the Nautilus. It is echoes of game 1, playing really well on this. Wax, man, this game has been back and forth. I mean, all those tower takes, those TPs, the Herald being used in the mid lane. This is the kind of exciting mid game that you'd expect teams that like UST, right? Stalwarts of the CLOL scene, right? A storied program, back-to-back CLOL champions, trying to do it this time with a little bit of a new look roster as far as the championship rosters are concerned. And PNW proving that they're worthy challengers, right? Making trades, good immediate trades, thinking 1 or 2 steps ahead, and you see that the jungle and the support, they're really kind of at the forefront of it, and you see it's really just gorgeous to see. I'm saying positive things here. I'm not really giving you much of a landing spot, and I apologize for that. I'm being a bad play-by-play here, but I wanted to highlight just how fun this mid-game is because teams aren't taking anything lying down.
No, I think it's absolutely spectacular to see a team like PNW who, a lot of people were underrating going into this tournament, despite them winning their division out as Winking eventually caught out.
In a little bit of trouble here, a lot of trouble, actually. Before I even got the sentence out, he did his best Array impression and pulled the cloak over his head and ducked behind a wall and said, "Oh, I disappeared."
I mean, Senna disappeared from Lucian for a really long time, and
Damn.
gonna be disappearing for like 5 seconds here. But yeah, just a quick little kill there from UST, and just showing how squishy the Senna can become if caught out. So Winking has to be really careful to make sure that stuff like that doesn't happen again. But this kind of goes back to a big issue that I was talking about previously, where it doesn't really feel like PNW are built yet to be able to deal with some of these frontline threats. Sure, they managed to get the kill onto Kenvi, but Kenvi's going to continue to get tankier as the game goes on. Porsche's going to continue to get tankier as the game goes on, and same goes for Trevor. So you need these sort of armor shred items as soon as possible so that you can burst those frontliners down and get to the meat of UST, which is Robbie Bob and Array, who will be doing the brunt of the damage as the game continues, as the game goes on. You need to be able to get things that deal with frontliners. I'm talking like the Cyrilda's Grudge, probably for Klexo is what I'm thinking about. And that is a dangerous game to play because you're going to have to fight to get that gold, and fights aren't exactly in your favor right now, as we might see here as the Dragon has started up.
The Muramana has come in for Klexo. That feels really good, but to your point, the armor shred, that's going to have to be a necessity pretty soon here. You saw how little that did to Kenvi, that fully charged shock blast. Flesco not going to be an option. Ran on and deleted. Frank gets ripped off the map here. Under the cover of darkness now. Winging signals the retreat. The white flag goes up. Doubtful trying to hold off Trevor. Dragon goes over to UST. Doubtful trying to go back in here onto the squishy support. Dawn and Shadow over the top will buy him a little bit of time here. Flexo going forward trying to help out Porsche. But Doubtful not long for this world. Porsche on a killing spree. The fight is scattered to the 4 wins. PNW getting picked off one by one. It matters not where you run. The Lions of St. Thomas will hunt you down.
And they're not done yet. Wing King has been found. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide.
Just about seeing if you could get one back, and I don't think they'll be able to here. Maybe Wing King can pull off a miracle escape. But Quacks, you talk about fighting on uneven terms. We were talking about it, and man, did we see that go that way. That's an unofficial ace there for University of St. Thomas. Now a 4K gold lead for them.
Absolutely huge team fight, and they're showing their experience as such a storied program, like you mentioned earlier, 4x4 in those team fights. They're navigating them so well, and PNW just look lost. They look scattered. The team fights just feel so difficult for them to play, not only because they're new, but because of the lack of armor pen items. They need to be able to burst through this front line. Porsche and Kenby were invincible during those fights.
Maybe they can interrupt the recall, JK. 0.5 seconds of invincibility. Or not invincibility, but rather where the recall won't get interrupted, by the way. Of the 8 seconds, the last half second. If you get damage there, it won't cancel it. So that's a fun fact that probably all of you knew, but I didn't until recently. So, you know, everyone learns at their own pace, and that's okay. But yeah, no, Quacks. I mean, I think you made the point there, right, where it's unfortunate because it just really does feel like the time that it's going to take for Purdue Northwest to be able to take some of these fights on more even terms, right? Especially when you weren't able to get Doubtful accelerated like you were in Game 1, or in Game 2, rather. I'm not sure Purdue Northwest have that kind of time. Now the gold lead is, you know, its market, right? 4,000. That's, you know, that's a component for everybody, at least.
For sure, and I mean, it's 2 items going over to Array. And yeah, just look at the gold lead, specifically in the mid lane. We were really hyping up Klexo as, you know, the person that needed to carry the game, that needed to put PNW on his shoulders. And despite all of that, it is still over 1K gold difference between Robbie Bob and Klexo. So the main carry is down. PNW, I mean, just looking at this gold difference, just looking at it individually, it gets a little bit more depressing.
Yeah, it looks... when you see the numbers in front of you, you're like, oh boy, the scaling might be on their side here, right? But UST, they still have that ticking time bomb of the Aphelios. Hextech Ultimatum going down here. Porsche not going to go quietly into that good night, though, but a big steaming pile of shutdown gold does go into the pocket of Frank. They invest the ultimate, but it is well worth it. Winking in some trouble here. The depth charge finds him, and that could be the death knell. Can Kenby get in range? Not going to invest the flash ult. Call the Forge God goes out trying to bail out his AD carry. Actually might have done some good, but Winking just took a really unfortunate path. That was the road he was given. But I think he might be cooked here. Maybe he gets the evac up in time and can travel out under the cover of darkness. Nope, accepts his fate. Kenby, eventually we'll get a kill, maybe. Got the heal out. We're going to do a little outro gaming, but just dotting some T's and crossing some I's as Kenby gets kill number 5 on the board.
And all this time, there's been some action in the mid lane. Array, holy moly.
Oh, flashing forward on the Aphelios. One more auto will do it. Array says, how do you do, Mr. Prank?
Absolutely, and look at the top side. Klexo will go down. A double kill for Robbie. I was going to call out, you know, after the pick on to Porsche, I was going to say now UST, because they had eyes on Doubtful, can just go straight for the Baron. And it's delayed, but it's going on nonetheless. UST marched straight onto the big purple worm, and no possible steal angles here for PNW, as Doubtful is still waiting to respawn.
Yeah, this feels like it could be the backbreaker. Let's see exactly what UST can do with this Gen G Baron buff. But again, with a team like this, you start out 1,500 gold up automatically, essentially. And I trust a team like this, a very experienced, been there, done that team that will be able to get a lot out of this. But zooming back out, comment to something that we were talking about earlier was just how... Oh, gosh, and I completely forgot it. I was making the 1 point. Good God, it escaped my head. I'm sorry.
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
Oh, gosh, it was going to be like a good one, too. I was going to like say something smart, and it's unfortunate.
You know, I mean, I relate to that as a college student when you're taking an exam, you're taking a test, and just all of a sudden, you sit down, the paper's right in front of you, and just everything seems to drop.
Yep.
You know,
and then your one brain cell just kind of slowly rolls around the circumference of your brain, and you look at it like, dude, what are we doing here? And he's like, I don't know. They all left. I'm the only one left. Sucks.
Happens. Yeah, I mean, PNW trying to look for avenues back into this game. I like that Prank is split pushing. They're going to send Porsche up toward the top side, but Prank does crucially have TP, so if he can actually get out of this, maybe PNW can start a fight that Prank can join, and Porsche will still be walking back to the lane. But there aren't really any big TP flank wards for Prank to take, so it might be cutting it a little bit close here.
Yeah, maybe you could get the Mondo deep flank into the river, but Porsche is, I think he's going to come with Prank, or he's going to make it very, very difficult for Prank anyway. Faked him out. Call the Forge God goes over. Kenby might be in a little bit of trouble here, but he might take down Winking with him. Just kidding here. 2.5 items is enough for Plexo to get the shutdown. Trevor looking for a way in. Last embrace not going to land. Array gets big old damage onto Poner. Winking's got the range advantage here. He can help set up Plexo. Plexo going to get hit by the depth charge. Prank hookshotting in from the top of the tower. Porsche has thrown up here. Big shockwave there from Robbie Bob. That will be enough. A double for him. The mid laner of UST finally takes the fight by the scruff of the neck and gets the advantage for UST. And they've got a chance here with this Baron buff, with a cannon wave. If they get the respawn timers right, Quacks, this could be game.
PNW, there's only 2 members alive. Klexo and Winking have to hold the line, but look at the damage coming out from Array. They have 6 grubs, Baron buff like you said, 4 members strong, but it's not going to be enough. But luckily they have a dragon to fall back on, or maybe a second inhibitor if they feel like it. All in all though, it feels like UST, they own this map.
They broke it open with the fight before Baron, the Baron, and then what they got after it. The lead went from a couple thousand to now just shy of 10 big ones, 10 racks in favor of UST. And they're gonna spend it well, Quacks. They're gonna mosey on back to their base, and they're gonna come back with oh god. I mean, they're almost all full build.
Yeah. I mean, UST. You even saw the coordination too. They had synchronized recalls. That's the mark of a good team, is when you all press B at the exact same millisecond and look really cool while all going back to the base and spending your $5 billion gold, whatever.
Yes. It does look much cooler, and these fights are going to look a lot cooler for them as well. The Medjais has come in for Robbie Bob. I remembered what I was going to say earlier, and I think you saw a little bit of that here as well. Both in that initial fight before the Baron that was kind of taking place on a few fronts, and then on this, the fight that preceded this this base push was University of St. Thomas, right? It reminded me of what they did in the mid game, right? When, okay, you got to pick on the, you might have gotten picked on the bottom side, but can be that means, okay, that's the go button to immediately get something back in the mid lane, right? Prank and someone else, they got the kill onto Porsche in the bottom lane, and then you look up in the mid lane and, oh, crap, Winking's dead, right? UST, even if they get aggressed on, they are going to take something else for you. You have to have all your bases covered against a team like this. Doubtful. Ooh, goes forward. Big old move ball. Donnie Shadow over the top, but he gets ripped through. Not enough defensive stats, but Prank able to get a kill there onto Robbie Bob. Blew the flash, blew the shockwave. It wasn't enough, but the rest of the cavalry has showed up for UST. Array's out of the fight, and it doesn't matter because everybody else are just beating PNW over the head with their wallets. Triple kill for the Cassante. Winking, all he can do is watch as his team is torn to smithereens. Playing with their food a little bit, but they are gobbling up another dub here in Game 3. 1 game away from top 8, excuse me. UST take the dub.
UST, they come up big, a sort of revenge game after what happened in game number 2. Through and through, it felt like they were in control, and they are going to take us to game number 4. 1 win away, like you said, from taking the series. Winking is going to go down eventually as Porsche's hitting the Nexus. We're going to game 4, 4x4. It is time for series points.
Very good game there by University of St. Thomas. A well fleshed out game, but again, it feels like a better version of game 1, right? Where you saw both teams opt into their strong suits, right? But UST, they left that win condition on the table from game 2, right? They left Doubtful there, but they banned out a couple champions from Klexo's pool, right? In the round 2 of bans, it was the Irelia and then the Jace that was, or the Irelia Yasuo, excuse me, that was taken away. I'm not saying that's why they won, at all, actually, but because Klexo got back into the game, right? He had a rough couple of early times. He got his no flash punish, but he got a cheeky double kill going. But UST, they adapted themselves and they didn't allow Robbie, or Doubtful, excuse me, got the names all jumbled, to get rolling like he did on the Diana. Even Prank had himself a little bit of a better time against the Cassante, wasn't getting blasted like he did in games 1 and 2. Winking had some good fights, but it just wasn't enough, right? We talked about how the counter punches that UST threw. For me, that was the highlight of that win.
For sure. I mean, UST, it felt like they were in command and control, but I feel like it comes back to the fact that PNW are a very snowbally team by nature. We saw it in game number 2. They managed to get the ball rolling early, and they took that and they slammed it into the members of UST, and that was a snowball they couldn't really stop. In game number 3, it felt like there were remnants of them trying to get Klexo and Doubtful ahead, but at no point did it feel like UST came unprepared. It felt like Kenvy was much quicker on the draw in this game in particular, and he had a lot of really star highlights, I think are montage worthy, if I will, in game number 3. And Robbie Bob was kind of the unsung hero, so it felt like the mid jungle duo, the thing that props the team up so high was completely outclassed by UST. It felt like UST had a better mid-jungle duo, synergy, combo, whatever you want to call it, than PNW throughout that game. And so they removed their biggest win condition, and from there, it just felt like there were no answers from Purdue.
Yeah, after a while, it felt suffocating, right? That was the word I like to use for what UST does in the mid game when they are ahead. But to be fair, that's also what Purdue Northwest did in game 2. So we've seen it from both these teams, twice from UST. Game 4 is right around the corner. We're going to take it to a quick break. When we come back, potential series decider for UST. Let's see what Purdue Northwest whips out if they want to keep this series and their season alive. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for being here on the Salty Runback Pod stream. One of 3 streams that we've got going as far as our partnered network of streams. Sounds very official of us. But thanks to you guys. Thanks to those that have reached out to us, to Grapes and Hawk, to the Salty Runback program, to what they've been doing to help support monetarily this product. You see the names on the ticker tape above you. Big thank you to y'all and those that watch as well. I'm 4x4. That is still Quacks. And we've got game 4 on around the corner here. Quacks, UST, they look like themselves in game 3. They look a lot more like they did in game 1, but we've seen it, right, from Purdue Northwest in game 2. We saw what they were able to do, but they whipped it out, kind of the same thing here. They gave Doubtful the reins. They said, all right, go get us a bucket here. Didn't quite work out that same way, did it?
I mean, yeah, we said in game number 3 that this looked like the style that both teams were super comfortable playing. We saw strengths from game number 1 in the draft. We saw strengths from game number 2 in the draft for both respective teams. And it felt like at the end of the day, UST just looked more comfortable doing their own style, right? And that's where the experience of these players really comes into play. The fact that they have been in this position before. They are back-to-back champions, especially Porsche and Robbie Bob, back-to-back champions, looking for a three-peat, looking to outshine the allegations of them just being supports for players like Shogo, who were also key members in UST's recent CLOL success. And they've been doing it, right? I feel like Porsche has had kind of a silent game in top lane, but he has been really commanding that top lane against Prank. It feels like Prank has not had any avenues to really punish Porsche at any point. Even in game 2, Porsche still looked really solid. And game 3, Robbie Bob looked really good on that Orianna. Him and Kenvi really ran the map in that mid game and set the rest of the team up to take control of that late game and eventually just hit the Nexus and end it.
No, and I think kind of to your point, you bring up Robbie Bob, and we probably haven't talked about him enough, and I think it's a really good point you bring up, and it's cool to see their dynamic kind of shift, right? Because I think probably the most powerful or the most high ceiling version of this team is on, Kenvi Olaf, Kenvi Kindred, things like that. And then something like a Galio or a little more supportive from Robbie Bob. But you saw kind of a middle ground being taken, I feel like, in game 3, where you still gave a lot of resources early on there to Kenvi, or rather, maybe he took a lot of resources. Either way, he was awesome on the Xin Zhao, creating a lot of space, controlling neutral objectives, controlling vision around those as well. And you gave Robbie Bob a little bit more muscle to play with, right? He had a death cap by the end of the game. He had 10 stacks on a Medjai, and you saw, to your point, Quacks, what he was able to do. But the point is, they work kind of in different ways at times, depending on the draft, but that sort of little versatility is part of what makes this UST squad so feared. Both very strong mid-jungles on both sides of this matchup, and they both can play kind of different ways, but I see a little bit more versatility so far in this series, anyway, from the UST side of things.
For sure. I feel like versatility is the name of the game, right? You see Kenvi, he's played 3 unique champions throughout the series, right? He's played the Kindred, dominated on the Kindred, had a little bit of a slump on the Gwen, and then had another dominating game on the Xin Zhao. So I'm kind of wondering for game number 4, are we going to see enough adaptation for PNW to cover all the bases on Kenvi? Or is Kenvi just going to bust something out new for the heck of it? Or is he going to return to maybe something like the Xin Zhao? Because I imagine the Kindred is still going to be banned, so Xin Zhao will probably be the only option. But I think the versatility that UST have shown in this series alone makes it really hard for you to go into game 4, game 5 against this kind of a squad who has experience playing a multitude of champions. There really is no shortage of what they can play.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of I'm grasping at straws here, kind of for what Purdue Northwest's answer might be. Right, I think maybe a switch up you could do. Right, I mean, we still haven't seen a winking game. Right, and with your backs against the wall here,
yeah,
if I had my say of what I would think would be fun to watch anyway, to say it would work or is the best idea, that's a bit of a stretch. That's not what I'm here to do. I think put Winking on something a little more traditional, right? This Senna Ornn bottom lane. Again, the theory behind it is sound. I think the execution even has been all right at times, but it doesn't feel like against a team like UST, you're giving your other sides of the map enough resources to carry you over that line to where it can be effective, right? I think you need to give him a little more agency. I wouldn't even hate seeing him go back to the Zarya or something like that.
I think the Zarya would be a fine option, obviously. I think we've seen Varus banned away in all the games, so that's taken off the table. A lot of Winking's big, preferred picks, a lot of his comfort has been banned away in a lot of these games. So obviously UST are paying respect over to Winking, making sure that his mechanical prowess isn't unlocked through comfort and champions that he is super familiar with. And so as a result, we're getting things like the Senna, right, that take a little bit more of a backseat, that take time to scale. So I agree with you, 4x4. I think it's going to be up to PNW to really unlock Winking in ways that we might not see. Maybe put him on champions that we haven't really seen before, things that we might not expect. Now, what that is, I honestly have no idea, but I'm excited to find out. And I really think that PNW, if they can get a good reaction here, if they can, set up Winking to be this big carry threat that we have been wanting to see throughout the series, then there's a very good chance we'll go to game 5. And honestly, a game 5 between these two teams would be really fun to watch.
It'd be awesome. It'd be really, really explosive. It would be a ton of fun. Because yeah, I mean, both teams have shown, right, dominant victories on both sides of the ball. Good early games as well from both teams. But I would like to see just a little more from Winking, if nothing else, from an entertainment perspective, right? This is a guy that we gassed up, and rightfully so. MEC rookie of the split, right? Was so good at the 80 carry position that Poner literally swapped from the 80 carry to support. And has played fine down there, obviously. But I mean, yeah, Winking talked about how much he has helped him, right, grow as an 80 carry. He's got the, Winking he's a very raw talent, scouted out of high school, but still being a freshman, his hands are incredible, but Poner's kind of helping him fill in those gaps as far as his knowledge is concerned, specific matchups, right, certain cooldowns to watch, runes, etc. So Purdue Northwest, look, even if I'm not saying it is, if this is their final game here in front of us in game 4, whenever we do get draft going, it will have been a pleasure to watch, because you see, again, just kind of some of these newer programs coming in and showing that they've really got a shot to punch up against some of these bigger programs.
I mean, I believe I looked at the Leaguepedia page, and it says that PNW have only been an established organization or an established program for about 2 years here, right? So you have players like Array who have been around for a longer than that in 2021, who are winning championships before this program even existed. So to see them get this far up this early on is huge promise, in my opinion, at least to the caliber that this squad is willing to go. When you have PNW, who are super new, are willing to get players like Winking straight from high school to bolster their program, to bolster them up and give them a name. I think that speaks a lot to how committed this squad is, to how committed this program is. And yeah, like you said, even if it's their last game, they should be really proud of how far they made it. They made an upset 3-0 over GVU. That was something not a lot of people had saw coming. And all in all, regardless of what happens, regardless of win or lose, I myself am super, super happy for all the members of Purdue Northwest, and I think they should be happy too.
Amen. We're going to take it to a quick break before we get Game 4 draft on the screen for you. So when we do, we'll have that, and maybe the final game of the series, but we'll see what Purdue Northwest has to say about it when we come back.
So, how's it going, 4x4? How you doing?
Good. I'm enjoying this break that we're on while we wait for Draft Quacks. It's good to have another South American connection on the broadcast. Yeah, you're a South American homie as well, are you not?
Yeah. My mother is from Chile. Though I will say, anyone who's visiting Chile, make sure you find a good Airbnb, because everyone loves their motorcycles and public transit there. So you will be kept up for hours. It's incredibly hard to sleep in the cities of South America. So come prepared. Get your noise canceling headphones that you're probably wearing right now as you're listening to me. Get some white noise prepared, and go at it. Because other than the sleeping situation that I had to deal with, I love South America. I loved Chile when I went there.
Gorgeous. All right. To a break we go, for real this time. We'll be right back with Game 4 Draft and more. Don't go anywhere.